Welcome to Locked On Golden Knights. Today, our off-season report card.
Your Locked On Golden Knights, your daily podcast on the Vegas Golden Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hi again, everyone. Tony Cardasco, Chris Golick from Las Vegas. Hope you had a great weekend. And don't forget to subscribe to our at Locked On VGK, or Locked On VGK, I should say, YouTube channel, and at Locked On VGK on Twitter. And you could find our podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen wherever you get your podcast. Chris, hope you had a great weekend. And today I wanted to let's start off with breaking down VGK's offseason moves, the moves they made, and perhaps the moves that they didn't make, and whether or not they impacted the team. And I wanted to start off with the acquisition, if you will, of Bruce Cassidy. So they have a new head coach. Is that an upgrade or not? I say that this team might have a tad more discipline and a tad more, I don't know if I should say they'll have more grit, but I'm hopeful. It's an incomplete grade right now. But as far as the offseason went with Cassidy, I think it could turn out to be a really good move for VGK, an experienced coach that's made it to the postseason repeatedly. What are your thoughts?
Just starting with Cassidy from a singular perspective, I think that is an upgrade. I think the changing of the guard was necessary. If we go back to, my favorite thing to allude to, folks, the end of season locker clean out interviews with the general manager. And I honestly think that was a big part of why DeBoer was moved on from, why he was relieved from his duties and Cassidy was brought in. The team felt they lacked identity, discipline. You saw Pacioretty's comments about, the country club atmosphere and everything. And the fact that there's just no identity for the team, no identity, lack creativity. And Cassidy is a proven winner, and DeBoer is too. You can split hairs about their success and everything, but Cassidy seems to have an established identity with his teams. They are tougher. They do work harder, and Cassidy, he's tough on certain players too. We've heard about that through many different circles that Cassidy might be tougher on the younger players, but hopefully they will respond well. So if we're simply starting this off by comparing Cassidy and DeBoer, I think when you take the entire situation, a change was necessary. And hopefully that will, energize, if you will, a new beginning for some of our VGK players. And I think that's going to help for season 6.
How important, I was thinking about this over the weekend. I know one thing that Pete DeBoer wanted to try to do with his VGK team was to set the tone early in games. How important do you believe the first 10 minutes will be of the first period, or any period, let's say, but especially the first 10 of the first period to kind of set the tone for the games? Is that going to be important under Bruce Cassidy too?
I think it's important under any coach, you would think. The first 10 minutes, you can look at a couple different ways. This is actually a fun little topic here, but let's start when you're on a back-to-back scenario, when you're on the back half of a back-to-back, right? The team that is on the back half, they're the team that actually usually has a pretty strong 10 minutes because they're still going from the previous game, and then things kind of taper off as the game goes on. So when you're the team that is playing against the team on the back-to-back, you simply have to do your best to survive, and then you kind of shift the momentum your way. But from a general perspective, especially for a home game, right? You got to get the crowd on their feet. You got to get them pumped. You got to hit a couple players early, get some good opportunities. And just taking from a betting perspective, a lot of local houses here in Las Vegas offer action. Will there be a goal in the first 10 minutes? The interesting thing for the first 4 seasons of VGK, it was, will there be a goal in the first 10 minutes? It wasn't just VGK goal, but in any goal. And then that line actually shifted to, will there be a goal in the first 9.5 minutes? So the sports books obviously out here seem to be aligned in the sense that there's going to be something happening in that first 10 minutes of the game. And I think the coaches certainly shadow that perspective by trying to get the team on the right foot.
With Cassidy, I would have to give him a B. I think a B across the board because of, well, he was with the Bruins. He was a coach of the Bruins, so definitely a B. But in any event, I just think that was an upgrade too, as far as the head coaching position goes. The re-signing of the RFAs, all but Nick Hague returning so far, and they also brought back Riley Smith. Those RFAs under 25 years of age, which McCrimmon alluded to. I'd have to say that's a B plus in that area, insofar as getting a lot of that young talent re-signed for VGK. And they did a good job in balancing the books with that talent.
No doubt. And this is, as we get deeper into the segment, I'm sure we'll just go ahead and give an overall score at some point. But, what we're grading is the now. We're not grading what got us here. We're not grading why the Pacioretty trade happened. We're not grading why the Dadonov trade happened and all these salary dumps and things like that. So VGK has to do the right blend of bringing in talent for the now. Phil Kessel, obviously, I'm sure we'll hit on that in a second, but also keeping your AHL staples in place. Paul Cotter, Ron Bjerg, Decision, etc. We have to keep them, because at some point this season, those players are going to be called upon, or 2 or 3 years from now, those could be the players that are carrying the mail to some degree. So just from a very general perspective, given everything that has happened this offseason, I think they've done a very good job in what you just said, Tony, balancing the books, right? There's so many different paths that the team might want to take, but there's only a few paths that they can take. And I think just if we're going to start with a pass-fail basis, I think we're certainly passing this offseason, given everything and all the challenges that the team has created for themselves.
Yeah, I was talking to Danny Webster from the Las Vegas Sun, the beat writer for the Vegas Golden Knights yesterday, and he was as surprised as we are about the amount of activity for VGK during this offseason. It's been incredible and a lot to write about for him, a lot to talk about for us. Letting Max Pacioretty and Dylan Coghlan go for future considerations is an absolute fail. I'm going to be kind today because someone said I'm trying to run Kelly McCrimmon out of town on our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, Locked On VGK. I'm going to give him a D.
You're giving McCrimmon a D?
No, just that trade, that deal.
Oh, gotcha. Understood.
I'm going to try to be a kinder, gentler Tony today, and I'm going to let him off the hook. It won't be an F. I'm going to give him a D. Let's say Pacioretty doesn't get injured. That, I think, was going to be a total fail on the part of VGK.
That situation is so strange. So, like everybody, when the trade, I was sitting at a Red Robin, I think it was an afternoon. I was doing some shopping, and I might have had an old-fashioned because it was Tuesday in the afternoon, and everyone should have an old-fashioned at that point of the day. But so good. We'll go have one for breakfast right now. I'll be right back. Drink responsibly, folks. All right, so back to the situation with Pacioretty and Coghlan. That is so weird because you can't. The angry part of me wants to sit here and say, you can't tell me you couldn't have done better than nothing for Pacioretty and Coghlan. For Pacioretty and having to throw Coghlan in so it's nothing, I think that's probably the way you need to say that. But at the end of the day, that might have been the best situation that VGK had on the table. It might have been the best offer on the table because leverage is a heck of a drug, folks. Leverage is a heck of a drug. And everyone in the NHL knew VGK had to shed a large portion of their salary. And it really came down to if they were going to move on from Pacioretty, Marchessault, or Riley Smith. I think those are the players that would get some type of return, or at least would be able to just simply shed their skin in the Pacioretty circumstance where someone did take on his entire salary. I'm not mentioning William Karlsson because no one's taking William Karlsson at $5 million and change a year. That's not going to happen without having to unload draft picks and things like that. So at the end of the day, I think Pacioretty having to add Coghlan for nothing was probably the best deal on the table. There might have been other teams willing to take on Pacioretty, which would have required either VGK to acquire more, take on some of his salary, When you make a trade, you can eat up to 50% any single team. So that's when sometimes a third team comes into the situation, and another team might take on some of the salary. But if you call the Arizona Coyotes and say, hey, jump on this deal here, we want you to take some of the salary. Of course, Arizona's not going to do it for free. They're going to want a draft pick. They're going to want something. So as goofy as it sounds, that Pacioretty trade, I think actually gets a passing grade from me. I'll give it about a C+ because I want to hope that McCrimmon maybe could have tried to work the phones a little bit harder, maybe try to do a little bit better. But I think a C+ is the top of the curve for me for that trade as well, just because the optics of Pacioretty having to add a defensive prospect, and getting back nothing. It doesn't sit well from an optics perspective, but I think that was probably the best deal on the table to shed 100% of Pacioretty's contract without going too deep into the well.
I don't believe that McCrimmon could have dialed that rotary phone quickly enough to
I
make
set
a
you
deal.
up for that one. I took
I know.
you down
Thank
that
you
path,
so much. You're a good job.
Cheers.
Acquiring Phil Kessel, a player who doesn't hit and does not get hit. I had to go there, but he is an elite passer. I don't know how much he has left in the tank. I'm going to give a B- on that acquisition. And again, a little footnote there that they should have signed Paulie Walnuts, right? Stastny right there instead. Thoughts?
I'm definitely not on. Listen, I wanted, when I saw Stastny go for 1.5 million, I did not like that one bit. I didn't even know Kessel was on the table. I thought me and you have talked about Kessel. We skipped right over him because of his previous contracts. I felt Kessel was going to command 3 million plus from someone, just because his time in Arizona, I think, tarnished him a little bit. And I think that gave other teams the leverage, if you will. I hope we're going to see an untarnished version of Kessel when he gets here. I really think the possibility exists. But, if we're going to compare Stastny and Kessel, I'm taking Kessel all day, just simply based on the points. Kessel is 34 versus Stastny is 37, I want to say as well. And VGK tried to offer, reportedly, of course, Stastny more than 1.5 to come back, and he reportedly denied that. So Kessel was the second choice, which if we're comparing those two players and that's it, I don't know how Kessel is not your first choice all day, just based on all the different things he has done in his career and his health. I mean, the health, that is such a big part of it by itself. And Stastny has the opportunity, if he repeats his season from last year, 50-ish points, based on his 1.5 AAV, the average spending per point is like 37,000 and change is the way the math works out, which according to Cap Friendly has him at a top 25% ROI, rate of return, if you will, rate of return on your investments based on what he's being paid. If he gets into, 61, 62 points, he has the opportunity to have the best return. And there might be some rookie contracts that are still for some big players out there, but he has the opportunity to be in the top 10% when you're weighing his production versus what he's being paid. And for that by itself, I'll give McCrimmon an A- on that acquisition of Phil Kessel.
Okay. And the 1.5 million is what's on the books. There's also comps at Nathan's Famous at New York, for all the hot dogs that he can eat.
The fries are actually really good.
Goaltending, no upgrade, no letter. It's an absolute D right now when you only acquire Michael Hutchinson and you lost Robin Leonard. That's a D.
Yes.
Maybe a D-.
No, I'll give that side an F. I will say that VGK has failed on the goalie side. And that's not a knock on Logan Thompson by any means. I am also on record many times saying I want to gamble with LT as our starter, and we'll see what happens. Does that mean it's going to be the right decision? I don't know. But right now at this second, assuming that nothing else happens in the goaltending department, which the way things have gone, let's just hold our breath for a second here. And something might even change between now and the season start. Like, I know what McCrimmon said in his presser recently, but I think I wouldn't be shocked if something still happened between now and early October when the season starts. But right now with the goaltending situation, it is a little discomforting having Logan Thompson backed up by somebody, whether it's going to be Hutchinson, Patera, or even what scares me even more is actually Brossoit. We've talked about Brossoit. The more games he plays is when his numbers start to struggle. If he can play that 15 to 18 game range, great. I think Brossoit will have a fine season. But now you're telling me you're going to have LT out there for 65 games. Now, again, I know I'm contradicting myself, folks. I'm sure things must be going well, Tony. We're getting shout outs and call outs, and people are yelling at us on Twitter and YouTube right now. So, let's kind of, whatever we're doing, let's keep it going here. But back to where I'm going with my statement here is I have said if LT can start 60, 65 games, then the team is in a good place. If he's playing that many games, then yeah, I don't think it's out of necessity. I think he's having a good season and things are going well. The reality is, if I'm going to handicap the situation, having a goaltender carry the mail for 65 plus games in their rookie-ish campaign is playing with fire. When you don't have a backup who is like a 1B type of backup who can play 35 games, like I don't know, I'm just spitting a name out, like a Jake Allen type, or, I know they kicked the tires on Varlamov, or at least we want to think they kicked the tires on Varlamov, and some other notable goalies, even Ottinger, who could actually be a future starter. But again, it's that weird situation where if we do sign someone like that, you're pushing LT down to the AHL. Like, he has to go to the AHL unless they tried and do the waiver game with Brossoit. And I don't know how that would play out as well. So yeah, the goaltending situation is an F, but that doesn't mean Logan Thompson is an F either. I'm not saying that by any means. Tony, I'm surprised you couldn't catch up with him last night at the basketball game.
Yeah. I saw that he was there at the game. Galaxy of stars there. No Golic in the house, so it wasn't complete.
I still have to go to one of those games. I saw your picture with the pyro and the show in the beginning. That looked like that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, on fire, sold out with the WNBA Las Vegas Aces.
That's awesome.
And let's talk just finally about cap compliance and how you would grade that out. And one of the contracts that slipped through too, when I was going through the books here, my own little books, Ron Bjork, was his contract for $2.3 million? I thought is that over 2 years or over two seasons? But
you tell me Ron Bjork's making $1 million a year?
I don't know. But 2.3 for a season, I thought was a little steep.
Yeah, I'm a little
chintzy. I'm a little chintzy. I'm not going to lie. But let's talk about the cap compliance, and they still have about $4 million, and you still think there's going to be shenanigans in the signing of Nick Hague, and you still do have like Evan Rodriguez, who had a career season. Milano, I think, had a career season. Those two players out there are the most appealing, I think, still on the free agency market.
No doubt. There's certainly some 20-ish goal scorers who are coming off of some very good seasons who had some low contracts. And I'm wondering what the situation is there, if they're simply just waiting for, all right, so I got the contract for Ron Bjork up. I had to do that. So he looks like 2.3 for 3 years. So his cap hits the minimum. So that's
okay. That was a minimum deal. Yeah,
that was close. But
I misread that. Okay.
Yeah. So there's some good players that are still out there, and I'm almost wondering if they're doing the not Phil Kessel, pardon me, if they're doing the Nazem Kadri, where if they're just simply waiting it out right now. And but this is the time you got to do something, because let's just take the human element here for a second, folks. Camp start in roughly 2 weeks. These people may have families. They got roots wherever they're living. Maybe it's not necessarily in the city they played in last year, but they have to make plans to live somewhere and change their kids' school and, learn a whole new city where they're going to live for a while. And I know professional athletes, they go through this, and some athletes do this, across the entire world, basically, in all the different leagues and the semi-professional and major junior and all these different, situations. So maybe they're used to it, but you tell me you want to bring on a 30 goal scorer who's, a young kid in his, low to mid 20s, and all of a sudden, hey, we'll see you in camp in 2 days. And that's just such a weird situation. So I wonder if, they're starting to wear down a little bit and they're going to take an offer. And I mean, geez, what if VGK did get one of these guys for like 1.8, 1.9 million or something like that, and we're able to hold on to Nick Hague? All of a sudden, maybe we're changing our grade report a little bit here.
Yeah. We've got a couple of players on the mend. Mark Stone with the back issues. William Karlsson with wedding season SZN.
Exactly, Tony. Exactly.
What's your overall grade?
No, my overall grade, I think the goalie situation is a concern, being the importance of the position, and not necessarily because Logan Thompson is the starter, but just because what's behind Logan Thompson concerns me. Let's go worst of the worst. Logan Thompson tears his Achilles, first shot of the game, and he's gone the entire season. Oh, like what happens there if we stay in house? I mean, Hutchinson, it's going to be a myriad of Hutchinson, Patera, Brossoit. That's not good. That's not good. Now, Phil Kessel, the Finnish kid, Manaman. That's, there's opportunity there. I think we did well as far as the forwards go. I think we did a good job keeping the core of our AHL together. On the defensive side, as long as we can get our hands on Nick Hague, I'm not the Nick Hague situation as far as him not being signed now. That's a non-starter for me. Things like this happen. Shea Theodore's situation dragged a little bit. I'm not going to factor that at all in what my overall grade is, but I think if it wasn't for the goaltending situation, I would have to give a B plus, just simply because of what the team was able to do given what they lost and where they are in the cap. But since the goaltending situation is happening, which the sensitivity to what that position applies, I'll go with a C plus.
Okay, I'm going to go with the B minus. So that's pretty good. We're pretty close there.
Well, but I'm actually lower than you, Tony.
Yeah, that's interesting.
This is weird. This is a weird day.
It was sobering when people started to blast me on the YouTube channel. Trying to run.
That's the first time you've been blasted. I doubt that highly, Tony.
Coming up next, what is the most underrated Vegas Golden Knight? Who is it? I should say. More after this on Locked On Golden Knights. Are you one of those people who thinks that it's okay to drive stoned? What's the worst that can happen? You end up driving below the speed limit. It's no big deal, right? Wrong. The truth is your reaction times are much slower. They slow way down when you are high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different, drive high, get a DUI. Welcome back on Locked On Golden Knights. Tony Cardasco, Chris Golick from Las Vegas. And Chris, I saw something on Twitter, I should say, over the weekend, and they asked, who do you think the most underrated player is in the National Hockey League? And of course, we localize things here. And so I just have one player, and that's Chandler Stevenson. It is with the guy's just unbelievable. Career highs, I believe, the past 3 seasons, 64 points, should have been an all-star, for crying out loud. This guy got screwed. He got shafted. 21 goals up from 14 the previous season. 6 power play goals. Is he going to play on the power play unit this season? Is he going to be important to play on the PP?
I think so. I mean, I can't see how he wouldn't. I'm trying to go over in my head really fast. I can't see how he wouldn't have a spot. You're the bumper spotter on the wing or something like that. I definitely think Stevenson will be back on the power play this year. I think that's pretty safe.
Okay, that's my underrated player. And I just think, it was an absolute steal. This is something that George McPhee did right, okay? You'll give him credit where it's due, where they took a 4th liner from Washington, Stanley Cup champion, and who knew what his role was going to be here. But here's a guy that took advantage of all those injuries this past season. And I also would like to know where he's going to fit in with all of these other players, these new additions. And is he a player that could be on that top line as a wing, perhaps, because he plays really well in the corners with Jack Eichel, or at least at times?
From the eye test, I felt Stevenson struggled when he was on the wing, and I think he's more of a natural center. And I would love, from a balance perspective, to see him as the line 2 center, putting William Karlsson down to line 3. William Karlsson has not produced at a high enough points per game clip to justify being out there on line 2. So I think if Karlsson drops to line 3, he might be playing against the other team's not as good of defensive players, if that makes sense to you. Obviously, you want your line 1, line 2 combinations out there for defense, that is, against the other team's top talent. So sometimes line 3 possibly slips through the cracks. But that's why I listen. If line 1 does happen to be Eichel, Stevenson, pardon me, and Stone, like everyone's saying, fine, so be it. I think that's a wonderful three to throw at you. But I would really much prefer a little more balance and seeing line 2 being Stevenson, Smith, and Stone, and then line 1 that gives you Eichel, Kessel, and Marchessault. I think the balance there from the elite passing, Marchessault does have that sniper ability and does get in, even though he's 5'0", he will get in front of the net and get dirty and go to those tough spots, and he can finish.
I think Marchessault is going to fit in really well with Cassidy's system. I really do. And I'm going to spill a little tea here because over the weekend on Stevenson's wife's Instagram stories, headed to DC to go to Tom Wilson's wedding. Ooh, that's like a curse word here, Tom Wilson. And then she took the story down. So I'm spilling the tea, man.
She took it down? Why?
Yeah, she took. I think there was backlash.
You follow Chandler Stevenson's wife on Instagram?
There was. I'm not going to go there, but there was some backlash from the VGK fans for him going to attend his former teammate's wedding. That's kind of funny.
Same people that are mad about the ticket prices, but go ahead, Tony.
Who's your most underrated player?
The only reason I'm not going to say Chandler Stevenson is because I think the
don't say he's overrated now.
No, but he's known now. He's done what he's done and things like that. So I think he is now more known and more noteworthy across the NHL and things like that. But I'm going back to Zach Whitecloud. I've said Zach Whitecloud a million times about any time I can find something good to say about him. And Whitecloud, he's quiet. Like, you don't really notice him out there, as weird as that sounds. You don't really see him after the game, as far as the pressers and stuff like that go. You probably can't pick in your mind to picture one interview he did where you're like, oh, wow, I can't believe he said that. But again, last season, he's a plus 21 on a team that had over 5 man games lost, 59 games played last year. So he did have a little bit of, some injury issues, but in 59 games, a plus 21 and I think that plus 21 exceeded our overall plus minus for the VGK goals. Now, that might have been skewed because we had all those goals against St. Louis in that last game, but still. And even last season, he plays 51 of 56 possible games. He's a plus 9. 20 or 19 points. He goes 8 and 11. Previous season, 2 goals, 10 assists. So his goals per season are now going up. He's a big body. He doesn't look like a big body. Like, I remember me and my dad, actually, we were talking about this one day, and I'm like, I didn't think he's 6 foot something by the way he just looks out there. But according to his hockey DB, he's just a tad over 6 foot. So, he plays a pretty solid, strong game out there. He's starting to score. He can move very well up and down the ice. And I'm not going to compare him to Shea Theodore as far as skating ability and goal scoring ability, but just maybe that could be the path that he is on. I mean, imagine if Zach Whitecloud, who might be on our third defensive pairing this year with Nick Hague, if he gets 10, 11 goals and that many assists, that would be remarkable. That really would. And Whitecloud is someone I look at who could possibly wear a letter someday for this team. He's a homegrown player as far as went through the AHL with us, and now he's cracked at the NHL level too. And I think he's someone, if we're going to give out one of those crazy $7 or $8 million contracts, if we can get him for 4 something million, 3.5 something million, I say do it all day for Zach Whitecloud.
Okay. Stevenson, back to Stevenson. If he has 60 or more points, I believe personally this season, this team will be in business. They'll be a playoff team just within the structure, the new structure that Cassidy is going to input and everything else with all the players and Kessel. And if he's one of those players that can contribute that many points, I feel that this could be a playoff team. I think he's very important to this Vegas Golden Knights team because he's I think he's one of the most consistent players on the ice at all times.
So 60 point scorers. Let's just kind of go off the rails here for a second. Stevenson, Kessel, Eichel. That's 3 right there, right? I mean, can we slot Marchessault in for 60-ish points? Can he?
He'll have 30 goals and like 5 assists. I don't know. Just kidding. No, I don't know. He's a possibility. He's a possibility. And Marchessault is great and consistent. Like, he's going to give you those 30 goals once again.
No doubt he's going to give you those goals. I'm just looking up his hockey DB really fast here, but he's definitely going to give you those goals. He's going to, but he contributes more. He's not a quiet leader by any means. He's certainly a leader on the ice and can, 66 points last year, Tony, 30 and 36. He got more assists last year, and you're dogging him for not getting enough assists. So, I mean, maybe that would be an interesting stat. We look at the last like 4 or 5 Stanley Cup winners and how many 60-point scores they had. And then we see if we can draw a parallel to the VGK.
Yeah, we just plan future shows off the cuff.
We have meetings to plan meetings.
We don't have any meetings. That's part of our problem right here. Coming up next, there was a story, Chris, on Peyton Krebs, the former Golden Knight, in the hockey news. We'll talk about that when we return on Locked On Golden Knights. Welcome back on this Monday edition of Locked On Golden Knights. Tony Cardasco, Chris Golick in Las Vegas. And Chris, we thank everyone, of course, for tuning in, making us their first listen. And again, that reminder to please subscribe on our brand spanking new YouTube channel, which is on fire, and leave some comments for us and some nice ones to balance things out if you can. But there was a story, Chris, in the hockey news. Peyton Krebs featured in a story. Again, we know that he was traded along with Alex Tuch for a couple of draft picks for Jack Eichel. I remember VGK at that time, the reluctancy, right, to trade away Krebs. I think that held up the deal for a while. He was the missing piece, and the deal was stalled. But is this a player now ready for a breakout season? He had just, I think, 1 assist while he was here, right, in Las Vegas on the NHL level. And they didn't want to give him up because they saw upside in his future. And he's back at his natural position of playing center.
Yeah. So, I mean, just kind of a side note, I, buy, sell, and collect sports memorabilia, mainly hockey cards and things like that. And I have a couple players where I kind of prospect on, where I load up on their cards, hoping they pop. Luis Robert on the baseball side, I've been all over him since AA and since about 2017. And I'm going to reap the rewards of that someday, I think, pretty good. Peyton Krebs was another one that I was all over for a long time. I loved his story. It was unfortunate, but he suffered a freak ACL injury like weeks or something like that before the NHL draft. He was prospected to be top 10, I believe, maybe even top 6 at one point. Unfortunately, the injury happens. That dropped him down to a spot where VGK could get him. I remember watching him limp to the podium, but it was a big thing to him to make that walk to the podium when his name was called by the VGK. And, he just kind of looking at his numbers here. That's why I was looking away for a second there. Only a few games in 2021 with the Vegas Golden Knights, but this is what stood out to me. So in Henderson, he plays the first 5 games of the season in the 2021 season. He goes 1 goal, 4 assists, point per game, but then he had his obligation to go back to the WHL. He couldn't, that was just his contract. He could not get out of that. 24 games played, he goes 13 and 30. But then he comes back with the Golden Knights and he couldn't get it going, unfortunately. That was maybe what led them to make that deal. He did suffer his first official shot on goal, folks. If you remember, I think it was in the end of the regular season, even the play, I can't remember exactly. It hit his chin and broke his jaw. And that's how he registered his first shot on goal. He unfortunately missed, I believe, the rest of that regular season, couldn't make the playoff run that season. And then now he obviously, the trade happened in Rochester. He goes 4-11 in 18 games. But with the Sabres, he goes 7-15. He was a -20, but I mean, I'm not going to put any stock into that. So his trajectory, his upward mobility as far as his output goes, I think he can become a very good, stable player, like a Riley Smith as far as maybe the output goes, maybe not necessarily the two-way ability, but that's just the first parallel that I drew. Maybe score some more goals than William Karlsson. We'll see about that. Is this a trade? Is that the player that could come back and make this trade not favorable on the VGK side? Because we know what Tuch is going to do. A healthy Alex Tuch is 25 goals all day, maybe even 30 goals. And that number might even go up. I mean, I love his size. I love the way he plays the game. I love everything about Alex Tuch except the injuries that he seems to be having the deeper into his career he gets. So Peyton Krebs is the X factor of that trade. And if Eichel becomes, continues his generational talent skill set, then it doesn't matter what the trade is. But if Eichel is only getting 65, 70, 75 points, and Alex Tuch scores 25, 28 goals, Peyton Krebs becomes an 18 to 22 goal scorer, then I think VGK would end up losing that trade, honestly.
Yeah, and what they did, they were very patient with him in Buffalo. He started off, as you mentioned, in Rochester on the AHL level.
That
He
surprised
played,
me.
he
That
came
surprised
up.
me.
Well, they wanted to move him to center and give him more
Right.
reps and more experience as a centerman, because that's where they think he'll have the most impact in the future. And then after the season, of course, Buffalo doesn't make it to the playoffs. They sent him back down to the AHL. I don't know if very many fans knew that. And then right now, I think they have him penciled in, even though they want him to play center. He's on that line with Casey Middlestat and Alex Tuch as a left winger. So I don't know when they're going to make that transition where they want him to play center, but they have him, I guess, at least for now, as the second line winger. And we'll have to see how he progresses in his career. But he's real interesting. And I just remember that trade was held up for a while because that was the player that Buffalo coveted. And I think he's going to play the entire season. I think he'll be a day one starter. And that's where we're going to see, I think, him putting up some pretty good numbers because he is very talented. And hopefully, he stays healthy.
No doubt. Like I said, he was a player that I targeted, from the second I learned about his background. He's a player that I started personally investing in. I got a nice little stack of his rookies and autographs and low numbered short print parallels and things like that. And if he does have a couple of good seasons, I'll certainly, flip those from dollars to donuts or donuts to dollars, I guess, as they say. And I think he will be a solid player. I think he will be a daily contributor at the NHL level. And he was the holdup. Like, how many times did we hear through various media outlets that, Krebs, they want Krebs, VGK won't give up Krebs. They want Krebs, VGK won't give up Krebs. And finally, VGK gave up Krebs. And I was a little upset at that moment. I was definitely a little bit upset. I loved watching Alex Tuch play. I've said this so many times when I was writing for Franchise Sports Media, which got me and you connected. So shout out to Joe and company there. But I wrote a couple different articles talking about Alex Tuch, and I think Alex Tuch is the hardest player in the NHL to stop between the blue lines when he has a full head of steam. How many times did we see it, folks, in Vegas? And most notably the Sharks against the Sharks, I think in round 1, season 2, if I recall, where he just gets a full head of steam. He starts at our goal line. Once he gets that head of steam, folks, he can just walk right through everybody and create an opportunity. And he does have the ability to finish. So, maybe Tuch is that elite finisher that we're going to end up really regretting in this situation the more we think about it.
Yeah. Right now, I think, just it happened late in the season. Well, it happened at the midway point of the season, I should say. But I think it worked out for both teams. And perhaps, Buffalo with Tuch had a little bit of an advantage there. And he just loves to play at home. And to me, you know what he was? He was the answer. He was the guy that if, remember when VGK would come back after the opponent would score a goal and they would come back real fast and score a goal? Well, he was the answer for me, either creating a shot or getting to the net or finishing, like
Agreed.
Just skating right through players, as you said. And that's something that VGK was definitely missing. Chris, we appreciate everything, all of your input today. We will give you an A on our report card. We thank everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe once again to Locked On VGK on YouTube. We're there and on our podcast, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Tony Cardasco for Chris Golick in Las Vegas. We'll see you again on Wednesday right here on Locked On Golden Knights.